A billionaire's restless night leads him to a secret he was never meant to discover. 3:00 a.m. The echoing halls of Jonathan Reed's glass tower are silent, until he hears the soft clink of a dish. In the massive corporate kitchen stands Lily Carter, a 17-year-old girl with trembling hands and exhaustion carved deep beneath her hazel eyes. She scrubs a mountain of plates alone, her fingers red and raw from scalding water. She should be sleeping before school. She should be living a normal teenage life. Instead, she's here, working in the shadows, hiding a desperate truth she refuses to speak. And when Jonathan's loyal German shepherd suddenly recognizes the dog tag she wears, everything he thought he knew about loyalty, sacrifice, and family is shattered. Before fate reveals the miracle waiting in the darkness, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe so you never miss another story about hope, faith, and the unexpected angels God sends into our lives. Rain swept across Boston's glass towers like silver threads stitched into the night. Inside the top floor of Reed Global Headquarters, silence ruled, a heavy, echoing quiet that seemed to press against the walls. Jonathan Reed, a man in his early 60s with silver-streaked hair and a sharply defined jaw, walked alone through the dim hallway. His steps were slow, weary. Jonathan was tall and broad-shouldered, but his posture slouched from years of carrying invisible burdens. His sapphire blue eyes, once full of ambition, were now clouded by exhaustion. Chronic insomnia had gnawed at him since the day his older brother, Michael, passed away, taking with him laughter, hope, and every restful night Jonathan once knew. Beside him padded Atlas, a German shepherd nearly 9 years old. His fur was thick, black and tan, once gleaming with the polished pride of a military K9. Now threads of gray softened his muzzle. His walk was stiff from old injuries, fragments of a battlefield Jonathan had only heard about through his brother's stories. Atlas's amber eyes scanned every shadow. He was loyal, cautious, and still every bit the guardian he was trained to be. Jonathan rubbed his temples as he passed the gleaming office doors. Work never stopped for a billionaire who controlled shipping lanes across oceans and infrastructure beneath entire cities. But the relentless hours no longer made him feel powerful, only trapped in a treadmill of success that refused to let him rest. A faint sound broke the stillness, a soft clinking, porcelain touching metal. Jonathan froze. He frowned, not in fear, but curiosity. No employee was scheduled to work this late. Atlas suddenly lifted his head, ears pricked. A low whine vibrated in the dog's chest. He tugged gently on Jonathan's sleeve with his teeth, a habit from his years guiding injured soldiers. Jonathan followed him, down marble stairs, through a corridor lit only by emergency lights. His heart beat faster, not from danger, but from the strange thrill of something unexpected. He pushed open the kitchen door. The industrial-sized kitchen, large enough to serve a gala of hundreds, was bathed in one warm spotlight over the sink. There, hunched over a mountain of dishes, was a girl, small and fragile against stainless steel giants. Lily Carter, 17, had sandy blonde hair pulled into a messy ponytail that sagged under the weight of exhaustion. Her pale complexion was dusted with freckles, but her cheeks were hollow from skipped meals and too many sleepless nights. She wore jeans faded almost to white and a gray hoodie 2 sizes too big, clearly not hers. Her hands were red and raw, trembling under scalding water. Each plate she scrubbed looked like another punch thrown by life. Jonathan cleared his throat. Lily gasped and almost dropped the plate, She spun around so fast her wet hair slapped against her face. Fear flooded her hazel eyes. Pure, instinctive fear. I'm sorry, sir," she stammered, drying her shaking hands on a thin towel. "I'm Lily Carter. My mom, Susan Carter. She cleans the offices on the day shift." Jonathan recognized the name faintly. Susan was quiet, polite, always leaving spotless spaces behind her. He had never seen her daughter. "It's nearly 3 in the morning," Jonathan said, adjusting the belt of his midnight blue suit jacket. His voice was deep but not unkind. "Why are you here?" "My mom is sick," Lily blurted, voice collapsing into itself. "She didn't want anyone to know. And after the party tonight, someone had to clean up. I wanted to help her." She stared at the floor, ashamed of her own existence. Jonathan saw the lie behind her words. Not that her mother was sick, but that she believed she must bear the weight alone. Atlas moved before Jonathan could answer. The dog approached her slowly, tail low, then lifted his nose toward a silver dog tag hanging from a chain around Lily's neck. The moment he sniffed it, Atlas froze. His muscles tensed. His ears folded back. And then, with a choked sound, he pressed his head into Lily's chest, trembling. Jonathan's breath caught. Lily startled, gripping the dog tag. It belonged to my grandfather," she said softly. "Daniel Walker, Navy SEAL. He died years ago." The name hit Jonathan like lightning. A memory. Michael Reed, laughing, fearless, alive, telling stories of his best friend and brother-in-arms, Daniel Walker. The man who saved him. The hero who never came home. Jonathan looked at Lily. Really looked. The freckles, the stubborn set of her jaw, the storm of sadness behind her eyes. She had her grandfather's courage buried under fear. Atlas whimpered and licked her hand, as if he finally found a piece of home he had lost long ago. Jonathan felt something shift inside his chest. A crack in the concrete wall sleeplessness had built. "Leave the dishes," he said quietly. "We'll talk tomorrow." But he already knew this encounter was no accident. Fate had knocked on his door at 3 a.m. with soap-scarred hands, and Jonathan Reed had just opened it. Morning crept cautiously into Boston. The skyline washed in pale gold, as if the sun itself was unsure whether this city deserved warmth today. In his spacious office, Jonathan Reed sat behind a desk that could have anchored a small ship, but he looked smaller than the empire he built. Sleepless eyes, fingers tapping restlessly. The encounter from last night replayed in his mind. Lily's trembling voice, the dog tag, Atlas's emotional recognition. Something inside him refused to let it go. He reached for the phone with a decisive breath. "Mark," he said the moment his trusted assistant answered. Mark Sullivan, in his early 50s, was a man carved from reliability. He had straight, neatly parted brown hair, thin-framed glasses, and a wardrobe of gray suits that matched his calm and precise demeanor. Mark had once served in the Navy as a logistics officer, an experience that left him disciplined and loyal, though his humor had become dry as bone. "Yes, sir?" Mark responded, alert as always. "I need information on Susan Carter and her daughter," Jonathan said. "Medical, financial, school records, everything." Mark hesitated for half a breath, not from doubt, but from curiosity. Jonathan rarely took interest in individual employees. "Understood," he said simply, already typing with swift, sure hands. While Mark dug into facts, Jonathan found Atlas sitting near the office window, back straight despite his age, gazing down at the bustling city traffic. The German shepherd's ears flicked at every faraway sound like he was still on patrol. The dog had always been stoic, but last night he had shown raw emotion, recognition, affection, loss. Jonathan moved to him and brushed a hand over Atlas's back. "You knew her," he murmured. Atlas pressed his head into Jonathan's thigh, confirming what words could not say. Moments later, Mark returned, holding a thin folder printed only minutes ago. The man didn't waste time. "Sir, about Susan Carter," Mark began, opening the report. "She is 53, works full-time here as day-shift custodian. No disciplinary issues. However," he slid a page forward, "overdue bills, disconnection notices, medical debts. She's been missing scheduled doctor appointments, likely attempting to avoid medical expenses." Jonathan's jaw tightened. "And the daughter?" Mark handed over school documents. "Lily Carter, 17, senior at Eastbury High School, 4.0 GPA, honor student, strong leadership notes from teachers. She was expected to receive multiple scholarship offers, until she suddenly stopped attending school 26 days ago." Jonathan set the papers down. The ache behind his ribs intensified. "Why did no one inform us about Susan's condition?" Mark gave a sad, almost apologetic shrug. "Pride can be a terrible wall, sir." Jonathan rose with a newfound urgency. "We're going to their apartment." He and Atlas rode in silence inside a small, modest company sedan, Jonathan gripping the steering wheel tighter with every turn. His heart pounded, anger, grief, and guilt forming a storm he could no longer outrun. They reached a small brick building in a forgotten Boston neighborhood. The concrete steps were cracked, littered with autumn leaves turned soggy and dark. Jonathan climbed 3 flights to apartment 3C, each step feeling heavier. He knocked. The door opened slowly. Susan Carter stood there, a thin blanket over her shoulders. She was a woman whose beauty had been eroded by worry and illness. Medium height, brown hair streaked silver, skin pale like paper. Her hands trembled as she clutched the blanket. Her hazel eyes widened with terror when she recognized her employer. "Mr. Reed?" Her voice was shaky, haunted by fear of consequences she believed inevitable. I was going to call. I just need a few days." Jonathan gently raised a hand. "Susan, I came to see you. May we talk?" Susan hesitated, then stepped aside. The apartment was spotless but cold. Blankets stacked near a powerless heater, a small stack of past-due envelopes on the table, and a photograph on the shelf. A younger Susan holding a baby, a proud soldier in uniform beside her. Daniel Walker. Jonathan felt his throat tighten. Atlas approached Susan cautiously and nudged her hand, tail low, recognition alive in his old warrior's heart. Susan gasped and blinked back tears. Atlas was a living memory of her father's service, a symbol she had not expected to stand inside her broken home. Jonathan turned toward her with quiet determination. "You should have told me," he said. "No one should be fighting a battle alone, least of all the family of a man who saved my brother's life." Susan covered her mouth, shock and anguish bursting free. She sank slowly onto the couch. "Lily didn't want anyone to know. She works so hard. She thinks she can protect me." Jonathan nodded, the decision already locked inside him. "Then we protect her." The silence that followed wasn't empty. It was the beginning of a promise. Night settled early over Boston, laying a dark velvet blanket across the narrow streets outside the Carters' apartment. Inside, a single lamp glowed weakly beside the threadbare couch where Susan Carter sat, one trembling hand pressed to her heart as though trying to quiet the storm inside. Jonathan Reed, standing in the center of the small living room, felt the weight of the moment like a responsibility finally calling his name. Atlas, the aging German shepherd, sat close to Lily Carter, his body pressed protectively against her leg. Lily's slender shoulders hunched forward as if she feared her existence might cause the room to collapse. Her sandy blonde hair was damp from a rushed shower after her shift, strands clinging to her cheeks, freckles stark against skin too pale for her age. Jonathan's gaze softened when he noticed the faint tremor in her hands. A young soldier exhausted long before her first real battle in life. He cleared his throat. "Susan," he began, voice gentler than any of his corporate boardrooms had ever heard. "Your daughter should be in school, not washing dishes in the middle of the night, not living in fear of bills and doctors." Lily flinched, as though chastised for trying too hard to survive. "Please don't fire her," she whispered. "Everything depends on this job." Jonathan crouched, not a gesture he made often, until he was level with Lily's frightened eyes. "No one here is losing anything," he said, "least of all your future." A small knock interrupted the fragile air. Jonathan turned and opened the door to reveal Mrs. Elaine Porter, a middle-aged neighbor who'd been checking on Susan for weeks. Elaine was heavy-set, with round cheeks, permanently flushed pink, curly chestnut hair tied back with a floral scrunchie. She worked as a cashier at a nearby grocery store and had a reputation for both gossip and genuine kindness. "Sorry to intrude," she said, eyes flicking curiously to Jonathan's expensive coat and then widening at the sight of Atlas. "I heard voices and—" "Susan? Are you all right?" Susan forced a weak smile. "Just help I didn't expect." Jonathan stepped aside. "I'm Jonathan Reed," he said plainly, leaving out the billions and the boardrooms. Elaine blinked, recognition dawning slowly. She had seen his face on news tickers and magazine covers, but instead of fawning, she simply nodded, respectful. "Then maybe things are finally turning around," she murmured, squeezing Susan's shoulder before stepping back into the hall. When the door closed, Jonathan faced Lily again. "Tomorrow," he said, "you will return to Eastbury High School. Mark, my assistant, will speak with your principal. You'll take your exams. You will graduate." Lily's eyes widened, hope and disbelief colliding violently. "But the scholarship. I missed deadlines." Jonathan shook his head. "Deadlines bend for the right reasons. We'll make sure they do." Atlas nudged Lily's hand then, whining softly. She looked down into those amber eyes and saw trust, a faith so pure it cracked the armor she had built. Tears slid silently down her face. Susan's voice broke next. "Why? Why help us? We're strangers to you." Jonathan stood again, his expression shadowed by memories he rarely let surface. "Your father wasn't a stranger," he said. "Daniel Walker saved my brother's life. Michael never forgot. Neither did I. I owe your family far more than I've ever paid." Susan bowed her head, hands covering her mouth to quiet a sob. "And," Jonathan continued, a softness warming his stern features, "Atlas clearly believes you two belong to him." As if understanding, Atlas wagged his tail once, slow, deliberate, then gently placed his head on Susan's lap. The dog's old bones creaked, but comfort radiated from him like a shield. There was still fear in the room, but also something new, possibility. Jonathan could almost feel Michael's presence again, guiding this moment from somewhere unseen. He reached for the door. "Get some rest," he said. "Tomorrow we start fixing this, properly." The rain outside eased into a gentle drizzle, as though the sky itself exhaled in relief. And for the first time in a long while, the future didn't feel like a threat, but a promise. The next morning dawned sharp and cold, the kind of Boston morning where the air itself seemed to demand discipline. Lily Carter stood on the sidewalk outside Eastbury High School, hugging the straps of a borrowed backpack tightly to her chest. Her sandy blonde hair was pulled back neatly this time, though a few rebellious strands still escaped, brushing her cheeks. She wore an old denim jacket that wasn't quite warm enough, and her sneakers were scuffed at the toes. Anxiety twisted inside her like a knot someone kept pulling tighter. Beside her stood Mark Sullivan, Jonathan's assistant, crisp in his charcoal suit and navy tie, posture straight like he was still on military duty. Even in the morning chill, his brown hair was perfectly brushed back, and the faint lines at the corners of his eyes revealed a man who had long ago accepted that life required vigilance. He tapped a sleek folder against his hip, documentation, letters, and approvals he had obtained before breakfast. Mark didn't show emotions easily, but in his steady presence, Lily found a strangely grounding comfort. Atlas waited in the back seat of the sedan parked nearby, nose pressed against the window, as if ensuring Lily wouldn't disappear again. The old German shepherd had taken it upon himself to be her silent guard. His ears flicked and tail thumped with restrained impatience each time Lily glanced nervously toward the school entrance. Mark cleared his throat softly. "You're going to do fine," he said. His voice was firm, not sugar-coated. "You belong here." Lily tried to respond, but the fear clogging her throat only let her nod. The double doors of the school swung open, and Principal Eleanor Whitman stepped out to greet them. She was in her late 50s with short, steel-gray hair that curled naturally around her ears. Her frame was tall and graceful, but her expression carried unmistakable worry. She wore a deep green wool blazer and held a clipboard hugged tightly against her chest, as though it held fragile hope. Principal Whitman had been a mentor to many bright students, yet Lily's unexplained disappearance had weighed heavily on her. "Lily," she said warmly, her voice layered with relief and tenderness. "You've been missed." Tears stung Lily's eyes, but she quickly looked down, trying to maintain composure. Principal Whitman then turned to Mark. "Thank you for arranging this meeting so quickly." Mark nodded. "Lily is ready to resume classes. The family situation is being resolved. Mr. Reed will cover all educational materials and accommodations." The principal blinked, stunned but grateful. "Of course. We'll support her in every way we can." As they walked inside, the hallway felt longer than Lily remembered, lockers stretching endlessly, like silent witnesses of all she had lost and was now trying desperately to reclaim. She passed classmates who whispered softly, not cruel but curious. Some offered hesitant smiles. Others lowered their eyes, unsure how to address someone who had vanished into hardship. Mark noticed her shoulders tense. "Head high," he murmured. "You earned your place here through excellence, not charity." Principal Whitman led them into her office, where a woman sat behind a stack of scheduling documents. She introduced Mrs. Diane Rayner, a school counselor in her early 40s. Diane had copper-red hair in a tidy bun, soft blue eyes full of compassion, and a calming presence as if every inhale and exhale was practiced to soothe others. She extended her hand to Lily with genuine kindness. "We'll adjust your workload," Diane said. "Extended deadlines, exam support. You're not alone anymore." Something inside Lily cracked open, relief flooding in like sunlight breaking through storm clouds. She wiped her eyes quickly, embarrassed, but Diane only squeezed her hand. Principal Whitman then placed a folded paper on the desk before Lily, her valedictorian certification, waiting to be reinstated. "We kept it," the principal said, her voice trembling slightly. "We knew you'd come back." Lily stared at the document, breath caught in her chest. Mark watched the moment silently, jaw tightening with restrained pride. She wasn't just a case file. She was a fighter. "Thank you," Lily whispered. "I won't waste this." As she stepped out into the hallway again, students brushed past her, bells rang, and life surged forward. For the first time in weeks, she wasn't chasing survival. She was chasing her future. Through the front doors, she spotted Atlas watching her leave. His tail thumped once, a silent salute, and Lily smiled, the knot inside her chest slowly unraveling. Tomorrow would demand courage again. But today, she was home. 2 weeks later, Boston bloomed with late spring sunshine, the kind that softened even the hardest edges of its skyscrapers. The world outside looked alive and hopeful. And for the Carter family, hope finally felt like something real. Not a story, they told themselves, to sleep. Lily Carter hurried down the steps of Eastbury High School, clutching a sealed envelope stamped with the bold crest of Georgetown University. Her cheeks glowed with a healthy flush that hadn't existed before, a mix of pride, disbelief, and breathless joy. Her sandy blonde ponytail bounced behind her as though celebrating every step she took. Waiting by the curb stood Jonathan Reed in a dark navy blazer, sleeves rolled up as if business could wait today. His silver hair caught the sun, revealing a man who looked years younger than the sleepless billionaire Boston had known. Standing tall beside him was Atlas, tail wagging with the clumsy enthusiasm only old dogs can make look dignified. "You opened it yet?" Jonathan asked, unable to suppress a rare smile tugging deeper lines around his mouth. Lily shook her head, fingers trembling. "I'm scared to." Jonathan nodded toward Atlas. "He believes in you, and he's never wrong." Atlas barked once, chest puffing like he understood every word. Lily carefully tore open the envelope. One glance, then another, eyes widening, filling with tears that glimmered like polished glass. Her voice cracked. "Full scholarship. I got it." Atlas leapt up, paws landing against her thighs, licking her chin in victory. She laughed, a bright, free laugh that made Jonathan's heart feel strangely full. But the day wasn't over. They had somewhere important to be. They drove to the Cleveland Clinic in Boston, an angular building of white stone and endless windows reaching toward healing skies. Inside, the air smelled faintly of antiseptic and promise. Nurses passed by with soft smiles, shoes whispering across immaculate floors. In a sunny recovery wing, Susan Carter sat upright in bed, color restored to her once paper-gray skin. She wore a cozy robin blue sweater, and though her hands were still a little shaky, the swelling had eased, the pain dulled to silence. Her brown hair was brushed and clipped neatly behind her ears. She looked like a woman ready to reclaim her life. Beside her stood Dr. James Avery, the lead specialist. He was tall, mid-40s, clean-shaven with warm hazel eyes behind thin rectangular glasses. His posture was straight, commanding calm confidence. Years in the military as a field medic had taught him how to speak gently, even with brutal truths. "Blood results look excellent," Dr. Avery announced, flipping through a tablet. "Your medication is working. Your body is responding better than I hoped." Susan placed a hand over her heart, wiping a tear with the other. "So, I can get better?" "You are getting better," the doctor replied with an encouraging nod. "Stay consistent with treatment, and there's a long, full future ahead." Lily dashed into her arms, careful but unable to contain herself. "Mom, I got the scholarship! We're going to be okay!" Susan cried openly, stroking her daughter's hair, whispering gratitude that felt too small for what had happened to them. Jonathan stood a few steps back, arms folded, not to distance himself, but to keep his composure. He wasn't used to being part of moments like this. Moments of healing. Moments of family. Then Susan reached out, beckoning him closer. Her hazel eyes were still moist. "You saved us," she whispered. Jonathan shook his head. "Your father saved my brother. I'm just catching up." Atlas nudged Jonathan's knee and then rested his head in Susan's lap. Two veterans of different wars honoring the same fallen brother in arms. The room fell into peaceful silence, a silence not of fear, but of futures being rewritten. Outside, sunlight painted a path across the floor, as if pointing them forward. Lily glanced toward the door, her excitement bubbling. "Georgetown," she said softly, as if tasting the word for the first time. "Washington. Everything is beginning." Jonathan nodded. "And you won't be doing it alone." Atlas barked again in agreement, tail thumping with the steady rhythm of loyalty. For the first time in years, Jonathan Reed felt something loosen inside, something unshackling. The world had given him another chance to honor a promise made long ago in desert sands. And tonight, finally, he knew he would sleep. Because a debt had become a destiny, and destiny had just come home. Sometimes, miracles do not come with thunder or lightning. Sometimes, God sends them quietly, through a loyal dog, a helping hand, a stranger who chooses kindness over comfort. Life is hard, and many people around us are silently fighting battles we never see. But just like Jonathan, Lily, Susan, and Atlas, when we choose compassion, when we lift someone instead of walking past them, God works through us. May this story remind you that no one is ever forgotten in His plan, that every small act of kindness can travel through generations and return as a blessing you never expected. If you are going through hard times right now, may God grant you strength, healing, and peace. You are not alone. He is writing your miracle, even if you cannot see it yet.